A multi-billion-dollar company is hemorrhaging money. The board of directors sits around a mahogany table worth more than most people's cars, staring at charts that show nothing but red. 27 of the brightest minds in corporate America, each with decades of experience, each earning seven-figure salaries, and not one of them has a solution. The CEO, Marcus Thompson, loosens his tie and looks around the room. Frustration etched on every face. Then he says something that changes everything. Something that sounds like a joke, but becomes the most important decision in the company's history. He looks at the janitor who just entered to empty the trash and says, quote, "Solve this problem, and the company is yours." What happens next will shock you to your core and completely change how you think about wisdom, intelligence, and where real solutions come from. But before we dive into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from right now. And if this story inspires you even a little bit, hit that subscribe button because we share life-changing stories like this every single week. Marcus Thompson built Zenith Industries from the ground up. Starting with a small tech startup in his garage 23 years ago, he grew it into a global powerhouse worth $4.7 billion. But success breeds complacency, and complacency breeds disaster. By late 2019, Zenith was facing its biggest crisis ever. Their main product, a revolutionary data storage system that once dominated the market, was becoming obsolete. Competitors were launching faster, cheaper alternatives, and Zenith sales were plummeting. In just 18 months, they'd lost 62% of their market share. The numbers were devastating. Revenue dropped from $2.1 billion to $740 million. Stock prices crashed from $138 per share to $21. Thousands of jobs were at stake. The company that had once been featured on the cover of Fortune magazine was now being written off as another tech giant that couldn't adapt. Marcus had assembled the best minds money could buy. Strategic consultants from McKinsey charging $8,000 per day. Former executives from Apple, Google, and Microsoft. Harvard MBAs with pristine track records. They'd spent 14 months and $47 million on research, focus groups, and market analysis. They'd explored every angle. Artificial intelligence integration. Cloud-based solutions. Subscription models. Strategic partnerships with Amazon and Microsoft. Downsizing operations. Pivoting to new markets. Nothing worked. Every strategy they proposed either required investments the company couldn't afford or offered returns that were too little, too late. The harder they tried, the deeper the hole became. That's when desperation set in. The board meetings became increasingly tense. Investors were pulling out. The media was circling like vultures. Marcus was getting 3 hours of sleep per night, running on coffee and sheer determination. His marriage was falling apart. His health was deteriorating. And still, no solutions emerged from his highly paid team of experts. On this particular Tuesday evening in October, Marcus was alone in the boardroom. Papers scattered everywhere. Whiteboards covered with complex formulas and strategic frameworks that led nowhere. It was past 11 p.m., and the cleaning crew had arrived. The janitor entered the room quietly, apologizing for the interruption. His name was Carlos Mendez, 62 years old. Immigrated from Guatemala 34 years earlier with nothing but hope and a willingness to work. He'd been cleaning office buildings for 3 decades, supporting his family, putting his kids through college. Never complained. Always smiled. Always invisible to the executives who rushed past him in the hallways. Carlos began emptying the wastebaskets, moving methodically around the room. Marcus watched him, envious of his calm demeanor. Here was a man who seemed at peace while Marcus felt like he was drowning. Frustration boiling over, Marcus gestured to the chaos around him and said those fateful words. "Solve this, and the company is yours." It was meant as a bitter joke. A moment of dark humor in his darkest hour. But Carlos stopped working. He looked at the whiteboard. At the charts showing declining sales. At the competitor analysis spread across the table. And then he did something unexpected. He asked if he could speak freely. Marcus, surprised by the request, nodded. What Carlos said next changed everything. He pointed to a chart showing customer complaints and said, in his accented English, "You know what these numbers tell me? They tell me you forgot who you're serving." Carlos had been cleaning these offices for 7 years. He'd overheard hundreds of conversations, client meetings, sales calls, strategy sessions, and he'd noticed something the experts had missed. He'd heard the sales team struggling to explain their products to potential customers. He'd listened to technical support calls where customers were frustrated and confused. He'd seen executives talking about features and specifications while customers just wanted solutions to simple problems. "Your product is too complicated," Carlos continued. "You built something for engineers, but you're selling to small business owners who just want their data to be safe and easy to access. They don't care about technical specifications. They care about sleeping well at night, knowing their business won't disappear if their computer crashes." The room fell silent. Marcus stared at this janitor who had just articulated something that $47 million worth of consulting hadn't uncovered. But Carlos wasn't finished. He walked to the whiteboard and drew a simple diagram. He'd been listening to customer complaints for years. Not by choice, but because when you're invisible, people talk around you like you're not there. He'd heard the same frustrations over and over. Customers saying the product was too complex, too expensive, too difficult to understand. They didn't need a data storage system with 1,000 features. They needed a simple solution that worked reliably and was easy to use. Carlos suggested something radical. Instead of competing on technical superiority, compete on simplicity. Create a version of their product that a small business owner could set up in 30 minutes without calling technical support. Price it not based on technical capabilities, but based on the peace of mind it provided. Market it not to IT departments, but directly to business owners who lay awake at night worrying about losing years of work to a computer crash. The idea was so simple it was genius. But it went against everything the industry was doing. While competitors were adding more features, more complexity, more technical capabilities, Zenith would go the opposite direction. They would create the Toyota Camry of data storage. Not the fastest, not the most feature-rich, but reliable, affordable, and exactly what most people actually needed. Marcus was stunned. This wasn't just insight. This was a complete reframing of their entire business strategy. And it came from someone they'd all overlooked for 7 years. Someone who'd been listening when they thought no one was paying attention. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. Carlos didn't just identify the problem. He had ideas for the solution. During his years of cleaning offices, he'd worked in hundreds of small businesses. He'd seen their struggles firsthand. He knew exactly what they needed because he'd watched them work late into the night, rebuilding databases that crashed, recreating files that disappeared, calling their teenage nephews for tech support because they couldn't afford professional IT help. Marcus asked Carlos to stay after the cleaning crew left. They talked until 3 in the morning. Carlos shared observations that were worth millions. Not theories from business school textbooks, but real insights from real experience with real customers. He talked about the bakery owner who lost all her recipes when her computer died. The auto repair shop that spent 2 days recreating customer records after a hard drive failure. The accounting firm that almost went bankrupt because their backup system was too complicated to operate correctly. These weren't abstract market segments to Carlos. They were real people he'd watched struggle. And he understood their needs in a way that no market research could capture. By dawn, they had the framework for a new strategy. Zenith Simple. A data backup and storage solution designed for small businesses. No technical jargon in the marketing. No complex features that 90% of users would never need. Just simple, reliable protection for the files that kept small businesses running. The implementation wasn't easy. The engineering team resisted. They were proud of their technical sophistication and didn't want to create what they saw as a dumbed-down product. The marketing team worried about damaging the brand's premium image. The sales team feared cannibalizing existing products. But Marcus backed Carlos's vision completely. They formed an unusual partnership. The millionaire CEO and the janitor. They spent months visiting small businesses together. Not for focus groups or formal research, but for real conversations with real business owners. Carlos would make introductions. His humble, genuine approach opened doors that expensive suits and corporate presentations never could. What they discovered validated everything Carlos had predicted. Small business owners didn't want the most advanced solution. They wanted the most reliable one. They didn't want 100 features. They wanted 5 features that worked perfectly every time. They didn't want to impress their friends with technical specifications. They wanted to sleep soundly knowing their business was protected. Zenith Simple launched 18 months later. The marketing was revolutionary. Instead of technical specifications, they showed real business owners talking about peace of mind. Instead of feature comparisons, they demonstrated how quickly someone could set up protection for their entire business. Instead of targeting IT decision-makers, they spoke directly to business owners in language they understood. The results were extraordinary. Within 6 months, Zenith Simple captured 12% of the small business market. Revenue grew by 340% in the first year. Stock prices recovered to all-time highs. The company that had been written off as a dinosaur became a case study in business schools around the world. But the most remarkable part of this story isn't the financial success. It's what happened to Carlos. True to his word, Marcus made Carlos a partner in the company. Not as a symbolic gesture, but as a genuine equity partner with real decision-making authority. Carlos became vice president of customer insight, earning more in his first year than he'd made in the previous 10 years combined. His children, who he'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, watched their father receive business awards and speak at conferences. But Carlos never forgot where he came from. He used his position to advocate for overlooked employees throughout the company. The security guards who noticed patterns in visitor behavior. The cafeteria workers who overheard client conversations. The maintenance staff who understood the building's inefficiencies. He created formal channels for insights from every level of the organization. The transformation wasn't just about one product or one strategy. It was about recognizing that wisdom and insight can come from anywhere. That sometimes the person closest to the problem has the clearest view of the solution. That real-world experience can be more valuable than theoretical knowledge. Today, Zenith Industries is worth $8.4 billion. Carlos Mendez owns 4% of the company, making him worth over $300 million. He still comes to the office every day, though he no longer empties trash cans. He meets with small business owners, visits customers, and ensures the company never loses touch with the real-world problems they're solving. Marcus Thompson credits Carlos with saving not just the company, but his perspective on leadership. He learned that the best leaders don't just speak to experts and consultants. They listen to everyone, especially the people who are usually ignored. The story of Carlos and Marcus became legendary in business circles. Not because it's unique, but because it reveals a truth that most organizations ignore. The people closest to your customers often have the clearest insights into their needs. The employees you walk past every day might hold the keys to your biggest challenges. But this story raises profound questions that extend far beyond business. How many brilliant solutions are we missing because we only listen to people with impressive titles? How many problems could be solved if we paid attention to the insights of people who actually experience them? How many Carlos Mendezes are there in your organization, your community, your life, who have wisdom you're not accessing because you're not looking in the right places? The next time you face an impossible problem, remember Carlos Mendez. Look beyond the experts and consultants. Listen to the people who are closest to the actual problem. Pay attention to those who experience the consequences of your decisions every day. Sometimes the janitor really does know better than the board of directors. And remember, wisdom doesn't require a college degree or a corner office. It requires attention, empathy, and the humility to recognize that the best insights often come from the most unexpected sources. If this story changed your perspective even a little bit, let me know in the comments. Share your own experiences of finding wisdom in unexpected places. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge how we think about success, leadership, and human potential. Because everyone has a story worth hearing. Everyone has insights worth sharing. And everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and valued for what they bring to the table. The question isn't whether there's a Carlos in your organization. The question is whether you're paying enough attention to recognize him when he speaks.